In the heart of Montreal, a quiet empire rises from humble beginnings. Saputo Inc., the company that changed the face of the dairy industry. What began as a modest cheese shop in the 1950s has grown into a multi-billion-dollar business with global reach. But behind the gleaming towers, luxury real estate, and success lies a story of dark whispers and unspoken ties. Lino Saputo, the man who founded it all, became a titan of industry, revered by many as one of the most successful businessmen in Canada. But what if there's more to the story than meets the eye? But while amassing his $6.5 billion fortune, Saputo has also been dogged by allegations of having ties to powerful mafia figures in both Canada and the United States, sourced by CBC. The 82-year-old businessman has consistently denied these allegations, most recently in his memoir, Entrepreneur, Living Our Dreams, where he dedicates an entire chapter to refuting the claims. We respected the law, kept our distance from criminal organizations, and avoided crossing the wrong people, Saputo writes. However, between 1964 and 1979, Saputo reportedly maintained a secret relationship with one of the most influential mobsters in the US, according to police evidence uncovered by Enquête, Radio Canada's investigative program. Is the Saputo legacy one of pure entrepreneurial genius? Or were there shadows lurking in the background, shaping the family's rise to power? Could the family's success be linked to forces beyond their control? Forces so deep, they've never fully been uncovered? What if everything we know about the Saputo family's wealth and power is just a carefully crafted illusion? It all starts in a small village called Montreal, Sicily, a place where the scent of fresh cheese mingled with the salty Mediterranean air. This is where Lino Saputo's journey begins. Born into a family of cheesemakers in 1937, Lino's early life was shaped by the land and the craft that would define his future. But his family's world was changing. After World War II, Sicily was no longer the place of peace and tradition it once was. Instead, it was a land ravaged by war, political instability, and the growing influence of the Mafia. In 1952, Lino's family fled the chaos of Sicily, seeking a better life in Canada. They arrived in Halifax, then quickly made their way to Montreal, where Lino's father Giuseppe would set up a modest cheesemaking business. This business, rooted in tradition, would eventually evolve into one of the most formidable dairy empires in the world. In September 1954, with just $500 for equipment and a bicycle for deliveries, they founded Saputo Inc., marking the beginning of their entrepreneurial journey. At first, success was far from guaranteed. Before Saputo Inc. became the dairy industry giant it is today, employing 17,000 people around the world, the family operated a cheesemaking business from a modest building in Montreal's Saint-Michel neighborhood. They lived in modest apartments above their small shop, working tirelessly to produce fresh mozzarella and cheeses that would catch the attention of Montreal's growing Italian community. But the Saputos were just one among many, trying to navigate a city bursting with competition. Here's where things get interesting. Montreal in the 1950s wasn't just a city of opportunity, it was a city with a dark undercurrent of criminal influence. The rise of organized crime in Montreal was no secret, and it's in this world that Lino and his family would soon find themselves entangled. How much of their success came from sheer talent, and how much was shaped by the criminal networks that had their grip on the city's economy? As Lino's cheesemaking operation grew, so did the influence of those who controlled Montreal's underworld. The question remains, did Lino Saputo's business thrive because of his hard work, or was it also supported by the unsavory forces lurking in the shadows? By the 1960s, Saputo's cheese business was growing beyond Montreal, but as the company's footprint expanded, so did the competition, and not all of it was legitimate. In what came to be known as the Cheese Wars, the dairy business in Montreal became a battleground, with rival producers resorting to violence to protect their interests. This wasn't just about business, it was a war for control of the city's food industry. Trucks were slashed, factories were torched, and violent threats were issued. The conflict escalated quickly, with the Mafia playing a central role. And then, the violence struck close to home. In 1963, Lino Saputo was brutally attacked while delivering cheese in Montreal's Little Italy. He was beaten badly by 3 men. His assailants made it clear, get out of the cheese business or suffer the consequences. It wasn't just a random act of violence, it was a warning. And here's where things get chilling. The men who attacked Lino were well-known members of the local mafia. Despite the brutality, Lino didn't press charges or speculate on the identity of his attackers. But local police records and eyewitness testimonies make it clear that these were not just random thugs. They were connected to the criminal organizations running Montreal. Could this have been a coincidence? Or was Lino Saputo's rise to prominence deeply tied to the criminal networks that controlled the streets? Was he being forced into a role he never asked for? Or was he simply playing the game, the only way he knew how? The most explosive and controversial part of Lino Saputo's story lies in the allegations of mafia ties, specifically his connection to Joe Bonanno, one of the most infamous mafia bosses in U.S. history. In May 1964, the Saputo family met with Joseph Bonanno over lunch. At the time, Bonanno was the head of one of the 5 families, the powerful crime syndicates that made up the New York Mafia. In his autobiography, A Man of Honor, Bonanno claims that the meeting with the Saputos occurred at the request of a mutual friend. However, an immigration document Bonanno filed during his stay in Montreal reveals that he had known the Saputos since the early 1960s and referred to them as his friends. The May 1964 meeting led to a business proposal. Giuseppe Saputo drafted a letter offering Bonanno a 20% stake in 3 companies owned by the family, in exchange for $8,000, about $66,000 in today's money. In today's money, that's a modest sum, but for Joe Bonanno, a man known for running organized crime operations across North America, it was a significant amount. Lino Saputo later wrote in his memoir that the family had no idea who Bonanno truly was when they agreed to the deal. It wasn't until Bonanno was arrested by Montreal police for an immigration violation that Saputo saw him referred to as the King of the Mafia in a headline. According to Lino, upon learning this, his father quickly moved to cancel the agreement. "We thought that was the end of it, as the deal was never finalized," Saputo recounted. Despite the cancellation, rumors of mafia ties continued to haunt Saputo throughout the 1970s. Lino Saputo dismissed these suspicions, claiming they were baseless and harmful to his business. "I felt victimized and isolated from Quebec society by these false allegations, which were based solely on our Italian heritage," he wrote. Despite his denials, there's evidence that Lino had more than just a business relationship with Bonanno. FBI records from the late 1970s reveal that Bonanno and Saputo shared financial interests. Documents from this time suggest that Bonanno had a hidden stake in Saputo's company. Bonanno's personal notes, discovered by law enforcement in the 1970s, reveal not just business transactions but a level of familiarity and connection that goes beyond typical business dealings. In the summer of 1975, the Arizona Drug Control District, part of a multi-agency task force, began surveilling Joseph Bonanno's Tucson home. Twice a week, Bonanno, in his 70s, would place his trash cans out for collection. An undercover van would drive by shortly after, swiftly removing the contents and replacing them with fake garbage, all while distracting Bonanno's Doberman with meat. Over the next 4 years, investigators sifted through Bonanno's discarded notes and documents, piecing together around 6,000 pieces of information. Eugene Amon, a former investigator involved in the operation, stated, "We learned that Bonanno was the most powerful mafioso in the U.S. and had influence in Canada and Latin America. He was the godfather, plain and simple." Among the notes, references to Lino stood out. One note mentioned arranging a trip for him to California, covering his hotel and restaurant expenses. Investigators, with the help of the RCMP, confirmed that Lino referred to Lino Saputo. Amon noted that the two seemed to have a long-standing smooth relationship. In 1979, after authorities searched Bonanno's house, he discarded another batch of documents, which included financial statements, letters from lawyers, and articles linking Bonanno to Saputo's businesses. He had obviously panicked and wanted to get rid of these documents, which have, as we now have found, connected him more deeply in his relationships with Saputo Cheese. Eamon said, revealing a deeper connection between Bonanno and Saputo's company. Why would a legitimate businessman like Lino Saputo be involved with a man like Joe Bonanno? Was it simply a business decision in a city where criminal influence was pervasive? Or was there something more sinister at play? As the Saputo empire grew, so did its connections to some of Montreal's most notorious figures. In 1970, Lino Saputo attended the wedding of Donald Coate and Barbara Viola. It was a grand affair, and it wasn't just any wedding. The guest list included members of the Rizzuto family, the most powerful Mafia clan in Montreal. Donald Coate was no stranger to the underworld. He was connected to the Rizzutos, known for their violent ways and underhanded dealings. But Lino wasn't just a casual guest at this wedding. He was the best man. His wife, Mirella, stood as the maid of honor. The Saputos weren't just attending, they were intimately involved in the event. This raised more than a few eyebrows, especially considering the Rizzuto family's bloody legacy. Why would Lino, a man who had worked so hard to build a respectable business, become so deeply involved with the Rizzutos, a family known for their bloody history in the Montreal Mafia? Was this just a social obligation, or was there more at play here? Could these connections have helped the Saputos rise to the top of Montreal's business world? Lino Saputo's autobiography paints a picture of a man who respects the law and has kept his distance from criminal organizations. He condemns violence, claiming that his family always steered clear of trouble. Yet the facts tell a different story. From police reports to court documents, there's a pattern of connections that Lino can't explain away. Why does Lino continue to deny the Mafia ties? Is it because the truth is too damning for his public image? Could it be that the Saputo family's empire is built on more than just cheese and hard work? And why, despite the mounting evidence, does Lino continue to insist there's nothing to see here? The truth about the Saputo family's connections to organized crime may never fully emerge. But one thing is clear, the reality is far more complicated than Lino's version of events. As the Saputo family's wealth grew, so did their influence, not just in business, but in their philanthropic endeavors and political involvement. On the surface, their charitable work appears to be a natural extension of their success. Yet, beneath the donations and community efforts lies a web of strategic investments and connections that raise an important question. Is their philanthropy truly about giving back, or is it a carefully crafted political and social power play? Philanthropy, a legacy of giving. In the public eye, the Saputo family has been known for their significant philanthropic contributions. In 2006, they donated $7.5 million to build Saputo Stadium for the Montreal Impact soccer team, a project that cemented their image as committed benefactors of Montreal's sports scene. This was no small gesture. The Saputos were investing in the very fabric of the community that helped build their empire. But it wasn't just about the stadium. The family's charitable foundation, the Amelia and Lino Saputo Jr. Foundation, was established in 2011 with a focus on education and community support. In 2019, they made a landmark donation of $10 million to Concordia University to create the Shift Center for Social Transformation, aimed at addressing critical social issues. These efforts reflect the Saputo family's genuine concern for societal challenges, positioning them as benefactors who seek to make a lasting impact. Yet there's another layer to this generosity. The Saputo's donations align with an important narrative they've built for themselves, one of cultural pride, social responsibility, and benevolence. Could it be that these contributions serve a dual purpose, not only to benefit society, but also to craft a legacy of influence and prestige? Are these donations really acts of pure altruism, or strategic moves to solidify their status in Montreal's elite circles? Political influence, a web of connections. The Saputo family's political influence extends far beyond their charitable efforts. Over the years, they've built strong ties with political figures in Quebec and beyond, a network that has undeniably benefited their business empire. The family's connections to key politicians, including high-ranking figures in the provincial government, have raised suspicions about the extent of their influence. Giuseppe Borsellino, Lino Saputo's brother-in-law, was a prominent fundraiser for the Quebec Provincial Liberal Party. This connection to Quebec's political elite only adds to the speculation about the Saputo family's influence in the region. It's not just about the money they've donated, it's about the doors it's opened. Political power often goes hand in hand with financial might, and the Saputos appear to understand this balance perfectly. Their business dealings, both locally and internationally, have frequently coincided with political shifts that favored their interests. From the construction of major infrastructure projects to their involvement in the Quebec dairy market, the family has proven adept at leveraging political relationships to secure advantageous positions. Their influence has undoubtedly helped them navigate the often murky waters of international business, ensuring that Saputo Incorporated remains at the top of its industry. But the question remains, how deep does their political influence truly go? While many would see their connections as part of normal business practice, the sheer volume of their donations and strategic political ties raises the possibility that the Saputos are in fact playing a much larger game, a game where influence and power are just as valuable as wealth itself. The politics of power, using influence for global expansion. The Saputo family's philanthropic activities have not just been limited to Canada. As their dairy empire grew, so did their footprint on the global stage. The Saputos expanded into international markets, acquiring companies in the US, Argentina, Australia, and the UK, making Saputo Incorporated one of the largest dairy processors worldwide. But how much of this international success was fueled by strategic political connections? In many countries, including the US, business expansion in highly regulated sectors like food processing often requires navigating political landscapes. It's not just about having the best product, it's about having the right people in the right places. The Saputo's ability to secure high-profile deals, such as their acquisitions of dairy companies like Stella Foods in the US, speaks to their capacity to work within the systems of power that govern global trade. Moreover, the Saputos have often been involved in supporting causes that align with their global interests. For example, their investments in sustainability and green energy initiatives are not just about corporate responsibility. They also serve as a savvy way to align themselves with political movements that are shaping the future of international business, particularly in Europe and North America. Their strategic political relationships, therefore, are not just about securing government contracts or philanthropic recognition. They are an integral part of their business model. By supporting policies that favor their operations, the Saputo family ensures they are well-positioned to not only maintain their dominance in the dairy industry, but also expand into new markets and sectors. Is it about giving back or solidifying power? As we examine the Saputo family's charitable and political activities, the question arises, are they truly about giving back, or are these moves part of a larger strategy to consolidate power? There's no denying the positive impact they've had on communities, from their donations to local universities to their support of cultural institutions. Yet, when we look closer, the timing and scope of their generosity often coincide with key business and political developments. The Saputos have crafted a carefully curated public image, one that showcases them as leaders not just in business, but in community development and social good. But at the same time, their philanthropic and political involvement has strategically positioned them to safeguard their family's legacy and influence. In the end, the Saputo family's wealth and power are the product of more than just their dairy business. Their success is also tied to their ability to maneuver within political circles, build influential networks, and leverage their donations to create an unshakable foundation for future generations. Whether viewed as genuine acts of charity or calculated power plays, their charitable activities and political influence have undeniably shaped the Saputo family's lasting impact on Canada and the world. And perhaps the true legacy of the Saputo family is not just in their cheese, but in their mastery of influence, both in business and in politics. From Sicily to Montreal, from modest cheese shop to multi-billion-dollar empire, the Saputo family story is a tale of ambition, success, and calculated risk. But beneath the surface, there's a darker narrative, a web of connections to the criminal underworld that has never been fully explained. Lino Saputo's memoir may paint a picture of a hard-working, law-abiding businessman, but the evidence suggests otherwise. The family's rise to power was not just the result of innovation. It was, at least in part, shaped by connections that many would prefer to forget. As the Saputo family continues to build their empire, the question remains, what price did they pay for their success? And what exactly was the cost of building an empire that has lasted for generations? The Saputo legacy may be one of cheese and philanthropy, but behind the wealth, power, and polished image, the truth may be something much darker.